Rostermania is not slowing down, and we got even more to talk about, so we're busting out the handy-dandy Rostermania tracker that we're going to be using throughout the entirety of the offseason. These are the teams, obviously, as it stands at the end of the CDL season, but here are the updated rosters for what we know so far. So let's hop back over to Twitter and talk about anything that has happened since my last video. Starting off, the Vegas Falcons have released Priesta from their roster. I think this is kind of one of those things that to be expected. I think Priesta and Aristides both have been, disappointing for the vast majority of fans and for the Falcons organization. But with him on the way out, it looks like TJ Haley is going to be replacing him on this team. And I believe somebody actually said, I want to say somebody said that Ronnie said this. I couldn't find this anywhere, so maybe he said it in like a Twitch chat. But apparently Xnit is going to be flexing on this team, which is pretty interesting. But Tej coming over to the Falcons, obviously he was released from the Royal Ravens, which we talked about that being a rumor from a couple days ago. But Tej coming into this team to play for Priesta. And Ronnie also goes in to say on this article, which I thought was interesting enough to point out, the organization has significant long-term plans. There's a lot of things I feel like I've been seeing people talk about a BZ going to the Falcons after EWC. That seems like it's just a rumor, right? So we'll see what happens with that. But they need a reliable player who they could pick up right now. And with Beans being a free agent, he could be a player they look at in the short term. And then there's also rumors about a potential move for Sib, but that appears that would be likely after, in the offseason. And this could also be intriguing for Sib, obviously, because he's played with Pred before, and Pred is on the Falcons. Tej coming in to play with Xnid, Pred, and Aristides to round out that Falcons roster. I would say does definitely make them slightly better, because I think Tej has been better than Priesta, but I mean, I don't think anybody expects that roster for the Falcons to do much at EWC. Then on the Toronto Ultra side of things, we got the announcement that Abe, former Stallions player, shout out to Zuma, another one of his guys going to the league. That, I mean, maybe he dropped, maybe he didn't. I don't know. It's up for debate. Is heading to the league here to play for Toronto Ultra. Now, Abe is a player that's been really good, touted pretty highly in challengers. He's an SMG player, which is interesting because then Joe Deceives goes on to retweet this tweet and say, he's excited to play. Can't wait to see the fans support him. And that Kleenex is going to be the flex on the Toronto Ultra, which, I mean, everybody knows, right? If you've been watching the CDL for 1 year, you've been watching the CDL for 5-6 years, Kleenex is one of the most aggressive SMGs in the game. But we saw Vivid, one of those SMGs, switch to an AR this year. Hopefully, this actually helps their team, but it's going to be interesting to see, Joe Deceives, Abe, and Kleenex pushing pace, and then Inside, who tends to, he has the nickname Iron Boots for a reason, right? So we're going to see how this roster plays out, but it's cool to see another, rookie, another young player get into the league to hopefully show, just what they can do. We saw it with Merc, we saw it with Rencore, we saw it with Super players getting their first shots in the league, looking really good this season, so maybe this will be another star. And I also wanted to point this out, right? Obviously, we know Beans has been dropped from the team. He's not rumored to be going anywhere other than maybe the Falcons, as we touched on earlier. But I just wanted to point this out because Breaking Point dropped the cards for Toronto Ultra. Beans is their highest rated player. Insight was their lowest rated player. And the comments were just, absolutely on ass for the Toronto Ultra, saying that this organization just continues to make bad moves. It's definitely a tough spot for them to be in, I'd say. And then obviously you drop Beans and then these cards come out. And the cards aren't the end all be all, but unfortunate that the guy you dropped had the highest rating and the guy everyone thought you should have dropped has the lowest rating. So not a good spot to be in if you're Toronto. Then we get to the Ravens side of things. And now we know that FDOT is apparently completing this Ravens European rebuild with obviously Gwyn, who is rumored to be heading to Cloud9, as we talked about in the last video. Tej, obviously potentially heading to the Vegas Falcons, as we just touched on. And Dylan Rex, who's supposedly going to be out of the team. That leaves just Slasher. And the rumors are that FDOT, Afro, and Cobra, all from EU Challengers, are going to be coming in to play with Slasher on this team. I definitely think at least the players being picked up make sense. All three of these guys have been really good in EU Challengers. I mean, Afro and FDOT teamed on Team Notorious, who were like the #1 seed, I think, coming into Challengers Champs. They won one of the Challengers Majors. And then obviously Cobra, who's another player that people have been talking about, another one of those potential French players that could be really, really good in the league. So I like them taking a shot on Cobra, taking a shot on FDOT, and then Afro, who's been in the league before, but has been really, really good at Black Ops 6. Putting them with Slasher, we'll kind of see what this team does, but this roster is going to be hard to predict because this feels like a lot of unknown variables for this team, but I do like that they're giving some people a chance. And then for LAG, Diamond Con is supposedly coming in to replace Fellow on this team. Now, the thing with the roster changes that gets interesting here, you can only make one roster move, apparently, unless you had players that were already off of contracts. So, like, when you look at the Carolina Royal Ravens, Gwyn, Tej, apparently their contracts ended on July 1st, which is why they were able to basically make more than one move. But a team like LAG, I guess, does not have any contracts expiring, meaning they can only make one move, because I guess you have to keep your core three going into the team. It's actually apparently called the omit rule, because if you didn't see last year, EWC, Boston poached 3 of the 4 omit Brooklyn players heading into EWC. So they're calling it the omit rule. You got to keep 3 of your 4 players on the roster if you've obviously qualified, unless they're off of contract, like we see with some of these teams that have a couple players potentially dipping out, like the Ravens. So Diamond Con, Lunars, Kismet, and Johnny is the team. The Diamond Con move makes sense when you think about the fact that they just hired the GM who was the GM or was the coach, I believe, for LAG last year, which obviously Diamond Con was on LAG last year. So this definitely makes sense that he's picking up, you know, one of his boys. People are calling it friendship cheese. There's probably some other players that have, well, there's definitely some other players and challengers that have won more and been really good individually on the AR spot. But I thought DC was solid last year. I haven't seen a whole ton from him, but Team War, which he was on in challengers, has been quality, and they even qualified for EWC. So they're going to have to make a move as well if he is heading to LAG. But yeah, I mean, looking at the free agency tracker, obviously my camera's covering LAT and Heretics. They're not making any changes heading into EWC. At least it doesn't seem like it. Optics obviously staying the same. Boston, FaZe staying the same. It seems Rocker, Surge staying the same. We obviously have the Ravens over here, a new 3-man. We got Gentlemates here in the middle with Diamond Con slotting in. The C9 coming in with Gwyn. You got Abe down here on Toronto Ultra. Tej down here on the Vegas Falcons. And that's a handful of teams already making changes, and maybe there is a chance that we see some other things happen, right? We're going to have to wait and see it, but I guess today is supposedly, or July 3rd, depending on when you're watching this, is supposedly roster lock actually this time, but there still seems to be some wiggle room is what some people are saying after today. So we'll see what else happens heading into the World Cup, and then obviously after that, it is going to, I think it's going to be a massacre of Rostermania potentially after the World Cup with some big teams making changes like FaZe or LA Team potentially. I think FaZe, I kind of think FaZe is definitely making a change. LAT, we'll see. But make sure you sub to stay up to date with everything that's happening Rostermania-wise. This tracker is going to be our key all off season. So stay tuned for more, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next one.